Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to understanding the most vital topics. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something you might not think about daily, but it underpins so much of our modern world: India's chemical industry. And here's why it's so important. India is currently the sixth largest chemical industry globally, valued at over, $220 billion in 2023? That's a massive economic footprint.
It truly is, yeah, a colossal sector. But despite that impressive scale, India faces a surprising and, well, significant chemical trade deficit. Last year, in 2023, the country imported chemicals worth around $75 billion.
75 billion, wow.
Right, while its exports were only about $44 billion, that leaves a gaping $31 billion deficit.
A $31 billion gap in a single year. That certainly puts the scale of the challenge into stark perspective. And what's particularly critical about this imbalance is where a significant chunk of those imports are coming from, right?
Precisely. A crucial point here is that between 30 to 35% of these major imports originate from China. This isn't merely an economic imbalance. It creates a strategic vulnerability for India's crucial supply chains, across various industries, too.
Okay. So our mission for this deep dive is clear. How can India move towards greater self-reliance in this absolutely critical sector? We'll explore, why this dependency exists, unpack what specific chemicals are driving this huge deficit, and most importantly, lay out the roadmap for shifting towards more domestic production.
Think of this deep dive as your essential guide, really, to understanding a vital economic and strategic shift. We'll be uncovering some surprising facts and connections along the way, I think.
And the direct impact on your everyday life cannot be overstated. We're talking about everything from the fertilizers that grow our food, ensuring our food security, to the pharmaceuticals that keep us healthy and safe. This isn't just abstract economics. Imagine needing a key ingredient for everything from, say, your car seats to your home insulation. Something as fundamental as methylene diphenyl diisocyanate, MDI, right? Right. And having zero domestic capacity to produce it. India faces exactly that 100% import dependence for MDI.
Yeah, it's a stark illustration.
Yeah.
Really highlights India's strategic vulnerability in a crucial sector.
So let's start with the basics then. When we look at India's chemical imports, what are the big ticket items, the ones that really stand out in terms of value and volume?
Okay. When we dissect India's chemical import bill, two categories really dominate: fertilizers and petrochemical intermediates.
Okay.
On the fertilizer side, we're talking about a combined import value of over $8 to $10 billion. That's for essential compounds like diammonium phosphate or DAP and urea.
Huge number.
Huge. To give you an idea of scale, India imported over 7 million tons of urea alone in the last fiscal year. Then there's phosphoric acid and muriate of potash, MOP. And for MOP in particular, nearly 100% is imported, just flat out.
100%. Why is that?
Simply because India has no natural potash deposits of its own? None.
Wow, so almost entirely reliant on imports for MOP, which is so critical for agriculture. What about the building blocks for other industries, the petrochemicals you mentioned?
Right, petrochemicals, we're talking about the fundamental building blocks for plastics, textiles, countless other goods. Styrene monomer, for example. It's not just the largest imported organic chemical by value, with over 1 million tons imported. It's crucial for everything from synthetic rubber to packaging. We also see massive imports of paraxylene. That's a key feedstock for polyester. Accounts for about $850 million in imports.
Okay.
Ethylene glycol, or MEG, another polyester input, roughly 80% imported.
80%.
Yeah. And for the ubiquitous PVC plastics you see everywhere, India is heavily reliant on imported vinyl chloride monomer, VCM, and ethylene dichloride, EDC. These aren't just acronyms. They represent the core ingredients for major parts of the Indian economy.
Are there other large-volume organic chemicals that feature prominently in this import list?
Absolutely. Methanol is a big one. India was actually the world's second largest methanol importer in 2023.
Second largest.
Yeah, bringing in around $900 million worth. It's used in a wide range of chemical processes and as a solvent, too. Acetic acid is another significant import, about 1.15 million tons imported annually, crucial for textiles, pharmaceuticals, paints.
Right. And those highly specialized chemicals like the MDI we mentioned earlier, what's the picture there?
This is where the strategic vulnerability becomes even clearer, perhaps. Isocyanates, specifically MDI and TDI, vital for polyurethanes. They're almost entirely imported.
Almost entirely.
As you highlighted, India has zero domestic MDI production. Zero. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in imports for these complex materials. Aniline is another, around 128,000 tons imported. And while individual pharmaceutical active pharma ingredients, APIs,
Oh, the APIs.
might not always top the charts by value, collectively, these essential drug ingredients exceed $3 billion in imports.
$3 billion.
Primarily from China. And this poses very real health security concerns, as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right. That really brought it home. So we've got a clear picture of what is being imported. Now let's explore where all these critical chemicals are coming from. Is the supplier base diversified, or are we, relying on just a few players?
Well, the supplier base is quite concentrated, to be frank. China is the single largest source for India's chemical imports.
Right.
Especially for organic chemicals. For instance, over 50% of India's acetic acid imports come from China. Beyond that, Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, they're major suppliers of petrochemicals. They leverage their abundant, cheap natural gas and oil.
It makes sense.
For fertilizers, Morocco and Jordan are key for phosphates. And Canada, Russia, Belarus are traditional potash suppliers. Certain high purity or specialty chemicals tend to come from the U.S. and Western Europe.
What's the actual impact of this heavy reliance on these specific countries, beyond just the trade deficit numbers, I mean?
Well, these imports are fundamental to vital domestic uses, so the impact just ripples throughout the economy. In agriculture, fertilizers directly impact food production, farmer incomes, making import reliance a strategic concern for national food security.
Absolutely.
In pharmaceuticals, India's thriving pharma sector, it's the third largest globally by volume, remember.
Right.
It depends heavily on imported APIs and intermediates for its bulk drugs. This was a vulnerability starkly highlighted during COVID. And for major industries like textiles and plastics, reliance on imported feedstocks like paraxylene, VCM, styrene, isocyanates, it directly influences their cost competitiveness in the global market. So it's about much more than just the volume. It's the essential role these chemicals play across nearly every aspect of the economy and, well, our lives.
Given that deep reliance, what have the import trends looked like over the last 5 years or so? Have these figures been going up, going down? What does that tell us about the urgency?
We've seen a steady and pretty significant rise in chemical imports. They're growing at a compound annual growth rate, a key AGR, of about 7–8% over the last 5 years.
7 to 8% growth.
Yeah, particularly for organics. And while there's this global China plus one dynamic at play,
Right, diversification.
where companies are trying to diversify their supply chains away from China, China still remains a dominant and often the most cost-effective source for many chemicals. Although there are early signs of India trying to reduce China's share, for example, other sources replaced Chinese supplies in DAP imports in 23–24.
Okay, some movement there.
Some, yeah. But without significant intervention, India's chemical import dependence is projected to widen even further. Some estimates suggest the trade deficit could balloon to $42 billion by 2040.
$42 billion. That really underscores the escalating urgency for action, doesn't it? That projected figure certainly highlights the scale. So if the demand for chemicals in India is so high, what exactly is holding back domestic production, especially for those critical imports you just highlighted?
Well, there are several interconnected reasons. Firstly, we face significant feedstock limitations.
Feedstock, raw material.
Exactly. For fertilizers, domestic urea production is constrained by the availability and, importantly, the price of natural gas. For DAP and phosphates, India has limited phosphate rock and sulfur availability. And as we discussed, crucially, zero domestic potash deposit.
Potash.
For methanol, our indigenous natural gas is scarce and expensive. That makes large-scale, cost-competitive production really difficult, forcing heavy imports. It's a bit like trying to bake a cake without enough flour, isn't it?
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
We have the demand, but the core ingredients are either too scarce or too expensive to make it viable domestically.
So it's about the basic raw materials. What about existing capacity and the technology needed to convert those raw materials into finished chemicals?
That's the second major gap. Take styrene, for example. India actually has surplus benzene, a key component.
Okay.
But minimal conversion to styrene, because building a styrene plant is incredibly capital intensive.
How intensive?
Requires billions of dollars. For paraxylene, production from existing refiners just isn't keeping pace with demand. That indicates capacity constraints and a lack of new plant investments. Similarly, for VCM and EDC, demand has just outstripped domestic production, and building new facilities for these requires not only significant investment, but also very careful handling of hazardous feedstocks like chlorine.
Right, safety is a big factor there. And for those high-value specialty chemicals like the MDI for polyurethanes that we have zero domestic production of.
MDI is a prime example. The manufacturing process itself is incredibly complex. It involves toxic phosgene, requires immense capital expenditure, and intellectual property, technology licensing, that can be a major hurdle. No Indian company has yet successfully built an MDI plant because of these combined challenges. We also see insufficient capacity for other key specialty chemicals like phenol, even though a new plant did come online in 2018 and helped cut imports substantially.
That's good news.
It was. And also for aniline. And it's not just individual plants, it's about limited dedicated chemical parks. While the government did approve 4 large petroleum, chemicals, and petrochemical investment regions, or PCPIRs,
Right, the PCPIRs.
only Dahej in Gujarat has truly taken off to create that integrated ecosystem, which is crucial for efficiency and cost reduction.
That certainly paints a picture of substantial physical and technological hurdles. Beyond that, are there regulatory or systemic issues holding back investment in this sector?
Oh, absolutely. Environmental regulations, while essential for safety and sustainability, often contribute to significant project delays. Industry leaders frequently voice concerns that, delayed environmental clearances and multiple approvals hamper sector growth.
Right, the red tape issue.
It's not uncommon for companies to face multi-year waits for greenfield projects, which understandably causes them to defer or reconsider investments. There's also a pervasive issue of underinvestment in R&D. India spends only about 0.7% of its chemical sales on R&D.
0.7%, that sounds low.
It is, far below the global average of over 2%. And this leads to a distinct lack of indigenous process technology for advanced chemicals, forcing us to rely on foreign tech or simply import the finished product.
So, it really does paint a clear picture. We have this huge domestic demand, but a series of interconnected bottlenecks, from raw material scarcity to technology gaps, regulatory hurdles. They all seem to be preventing domestic supply from catching up. It really explains why that backward integration into base or intermediate chemicals is often missing domestically.
Okay, given these significant challenges, our sources suggest there are ample opportunities for import substitution. So turning to the flip side of that coin, where are the opportunities for India to reverse this trend, and what kind of investment are we talking about?
Indeed, the potential for reversing this trend is significant. For bulk petrochemicals, the strategy really involves setting up large integrated complexes. Think of it like China's rapid capacity build-out, or maybe BASF's Verbund model,
The integrated site model. Exactly. Which integrates refineries with downstream chemistries to maximize efficiency. Concrete examples. Leveraging the existing Paradip refinery for domestic paraxylene production. Or investing in a dedicated styrene plant, perhaps through a joint venture. We're talking substantial capital expenditure here. On the order of $1–2 billion each for a global-scale styrene or PX unit.
1 to 2 billion per plant.
Yeah. However, the import substitution impact is equally large, potentially saving $800 million to $1 billion annually in import bills for each such plant. A quicker, more accessible win here, a sort of low-hanging fruit, would be expanding existing refinery petrochemical units. That's relatively quicker and less costly than building entirely new facilities.
That's a compelling return on investment, certainly, especially that low-hanging fruit. And what about methanol, which we heard is such a huge import?
Right, methanol. India is actively exploring coal-to-methanol and biomass-to-methanol technologies. This could leverage India's abundant coal reserves. China, for instance, has already proven the coal-based route at scale. A 1 million tons per annum coal gasification-based methanol complex, for example, could cost around $1.52 billion. Importantly, there's also the promise of emerging technologies, like producing methanol from captured cocoa and green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen, right. That aligns with climate goals, too.
Perfectly. It aligns with India's broader green growth goals, and domestic methanol production would then unlock the production of various derivatives, like acetic acid, which is currently another major import.
And how about fertilizers and ammonia, given their criticality for food security?
For fertilizers, India is already investing heavily in new urea plants. The aim is near self-sufficiency by late 2025.
That soon. That's ambitious.
It is. For phosphates, the strategy involves importing rock phosphate to produce more phosphoric acid locally, rather than importing the finished DAP. While potash remains a geological challenge, that lack of deposits, research into sea brine or coal ash extraction is underway, trying to find domestic sources. We're also seeing consideration for large green ammonia plants, costing over $1 billion for a 1 million tons per annum facility. That would reduce dependence on imported LNG for fertilizer production and, again, align with renewable energy goals.
What about the more specialized chemicals and pharmaceutical APIs, where we also identified significant import dependence, especially from China?
Here, it's more about focused technology adoption and scaling up smaller units. The government's PLI scheme for bulk drugs launched in 2020. That's a key incentive.
The production-linked incentive scheme, yeah.
Exactly. It's already spurring projects for critical APIs. Industry experts also point to the promise of things like continuous flow reactors and biocatalysis as enabling technologies for more cost-effective drug intermediates. These interventions, while perhaps smaller in scale than a giant petrochemical plant, can yield a very high impact, reducing imports of numerous niche chemicals and boosting India's pharmaceutical export capabilities.
So just to crystallize, what are some of those low-hanging fruits, the quicker, more accessible wins that India can achieve in import substitution?
EPIs, the active pharma ingredients, are definitely a prime example. With the PLI scheme and India's existing pharma know-how, we can quickly localize production of certain APIs within, say, 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years, okay.
Agrochemical intermediates, leveraging existing plants and talent, are another quick win, especially as global firms look for those China plus one alternatives for their supply chains.
Right, seizing that opportunity.
Exactly. Reviving domestic manufacture of dyes and pigments and essential solvents like phenol and acetone, also immediately feasible. Remember, India's phenol plant, which came up in 2018, it substantially cut imports. It demonstrates what's possible when a focused effort is made.
That's encouraging. What about the big picture investment then? What's the total capital outlay needed for this kind of broad transformation?
Look, a rough estimate suggests an investment of around $8 to $10 billion over 5 to 7 years.
8 to 10 billion.
Yeah. That could establish most of the needed capacities. And the returns are compelling, not just in curbing that $30 billion plus trade deficit, but also in creating an estimated 2 million plus new jobs, directly and indirectly, in the sector.
It certainly sounds like the technologies are largely available, and with the right investment, India can really make a significant dent in its import reliance. But it also sounds like strong government support and clear policy will be absolutely critical, right?
That's precisely it. Couldn't agree more. To truly achieve self-reliance in the chemical sector, it's not just about building plants. It's about fostering a comprehensive, supportive ecosystem.
So what policy and regulatory levers are most important to pull to make this happen?
Firstly, a tailored PLI scheme for the chemical sector, extending beyond just bulk drugs. That would be vital. To incentivize domestic manufacturing of a broader range of high-import chemicals, customs duty tweaks are also crucial. Well, maintaining low duties on feedstocks to keep input costs competitive for domestic producers, while applying moderate duties on finished products to provide a level playing field. That kind of balance.
Okay. And for infrastructure and simplifying approvals, what's needed there?
Reinvigorating the PCPIRs, the chemical investment regions, beyond just Dahej, with viability gap funding perhaps. That's essential to create integrated chemical hubs that benefit from shared infrastructure. And crucially, streamlining environmental and regulatory approvals through a fast-track clearance mechanism, that's paramount.
Faster approvals.
Much faster. There's even a proposed concept of deemed environmental clearance if approval exceeds 270 days, which could dramatically reduce project delays. And fundamentally, reviving a comprehensive national chemical policy would set clear targets, like, say, a 50% import reduction by 2030, and encourage green chemistry principles through targeted incentives.
Policy is one side of the coin, but what about the actual raw materials themselves? How does India secure or substitute the inputs for all this new production?
The strategy has to be one of diversification and innovation. For petrochemicals, this means strengthening the integration of refineries with petrochemicals.
Getting more value from crude oil.
Exactly. Convert more of our crude oil into value-added chemicals, and leveraging global tie-ups for feedstock, like importing ethane from the U.S. perhaps. For critical inputs like natural gas, green hydrogen emerges as a strategic alternative for ammonia and methanol production, supported by the National Green Hydrogen Mission.
Right.
India also plans to utilize its vast coal reserves through coal gasification and convert biomass into chemical feedstocks, exploring multiple avenues. For scarce minerals like phosphate rock and potassium ore, the strategy involves intensified domestic exploration alongside overseas asset acquisition.
Buying stakes abroad.
Yeah, like Indian companies acquiring stakes in Jordanian phosphate mines to secure supply, that kind of thing.
So when you put all of these pieces together, policy, investment, raw materials, what does this all mean? If India successfully implements this ambitious plan, what's the ultimate economic and strategic impact we can expect?
The economic impact would be profound, really. We could see trade deficit reduction and forex savings of about $15 billion annually,
$15 billion a year.
potentially accumulating to over $100 billion over a decade. This would also fuel significant GDP growth and industrial development, with an estimated 2 million plus new jobs created in the sector, fostering skill development, employment.
Huge job creation potential.
Huge. Strategically, this translates into direct pharma and food security, reducing reliance on external sources, particularly China, for essential APIs and ensuring indigenous fertilizer capacity. This, in turn, gives India greater autonomy in making policy decisions without external pressures.
More independence.
Exactly. Furthermore, a diversified and robust chemical supply chain makes India inherently more resilient to global disruptions like pandemics or geopolitical trade wars, ensuring stability.
It's truly fascinating to consider how this isn't just about chemicals, is it? It's about building a fundamentally more self-sustaining and resilient India for the future.
Indeed. It's about transforming India's chemical sector from import-dependent to a self-reliant powerhouse, which is absolutely vital for its Viksit Bharat, or Developed India Vision by 2047. If successful, the sector itself could reach $1 trillion by 2040.
A trillion-dollar industry. Wow, so as India aims to meet 90% or more of its bulk chemical needs domestically, just imagine a future where the materials in your car, your phone, or even your clothing are sourced from a truly local, resilient supply chain. What other everyday products do you think would be dramatically impacted if India achieves such deep chemical self-reliance?
Well, it's a massive industrial transformation, isn't it? And the ripple effects on our daily lives and the global economy, they would just be immense. So much relies on this base.